The security feeds showed Commander Jake Harrison exactly 3 seconds before the blast doors sealed. 3 seconds to decide if he'd follow the order that would chain him to an alien monarch or let Earth's fragile alliance shatter into war. He ran. The corridor bucked beneath his boots as the Valorian flagship's engines surged. Diplomatic quarters, Section 9. He had the layout memorized, but memory didn't account for the gravity shifts that slammed him into bulkheads or the ozone stink of overloaded power conduits. Harrison, confirm position. General Vance's voice crackled through his earpiece. En route. Jake vaulted over a collapsed maintenance drone. Behind him, the human delegation was probably still arguing, still pretending this wasn't a suicide mission, dressed in ceremonial robes. The Valorians had given Earth a choice: marry their princess to a human officer, or watch the Armada reduce Beijing to glass. Simple, brutal, effective. Jake wasn't special. He was expendable. Single, no family. Perfect sacrifice. The doors to the royal chamber stood open. No guards? That should have warned him. He stepped through into a space that defied physics. The walls curved upward into impossible angles, lit by stars that shouldn't exist inside a ship. At the center, on a throne made of something that looked like frozen lightning, sat Princess Lyra. She wasn't what the briefings promised. Earth intelligence called her beautiful. They were idiots. She was a weapon, 7 feet of corded muscle beneath translucent armor skin that pulsed with bioluminescent patterns. 4 arms, each tipped with retractable claws. Her face was almost human, if humans had eyes like molten silver and could smile with too many teeth. "You are late, Commander." Her voice bypassed his ears, resonated directly in his skull. "The ceremony begins in 4 minutes. Jake's hand drifted toward his sidearm. Useless against her, but instinct didn't care about odds. "I don't take orders from—" She moved. 1 second she was seated. The next, she had him by the throat, lifting him off the deck. Not choking, demonstrating. "You take orders from your General Vance. He commanded you here. I am simply the consequence of your obedience." She set him down gently. "Do you know why I chose you, Commander Harrison?" "Chose," Jake coughed. "You demanded." "We delivered." Lyra's laugh was glacial. "Your superiors believe they sacrificed you. They are wrong. I reviewed 4,000 personnel files. I selected you. Why? Because in 17 engagements, you never abandoned wounded soldiers. Because you negotiated a ceasefire with the Korath raiders when your ammunition was exhausted. Because you understand that survival requires more than weapons." She circled him, predatory and precise. "Earth believes this marriage is symbolic. A leash on Valorian aggression." Her claws extended with a sound like breaking ice. "They have no idea what is coming. Neither do you, but you will." The chamber doors sealed. The ceremony had begun. Jake's uniform dissolved. Not metaphorically, the fabric unraveled at molecular level, replaced by ceremonial armor that grew from Lyra's touch like living metal. It bonded to his skin. Cold first, then burning, then nothing. Just weight and the sensation of being encased in something that breathed. "What the hell is this?" He tried to pull at the chest plate. It didn't budge. "Insurance." Lyra's 4 hands moved in practiced patterns, weaving glowing threads through the air. "The Valorian marriage rite is a genetic contract. You become partially mine. I become partially yours. It cannot be broken by distance, deception, or death." Jake's training screamed at him to fight, to run, to do anything except stand there while alien magic rewrote his biology. But the armor had locked his joints. He could breathe, speak, nothing else. "You're turning me into what? A slave?" "A partner." She stepped closer, her silver eyes reflecting his face in triplicate. The armor links our nervous systems. You will feel what I feel, know what I know. When the Devourers arrive, you will understand why I need you. Devourers. The word tasted like ashes. Intelligence never mentioned. Your intelligence knows nothing. Lyra's voice dropped to something almost gentle, almost human. 3 months ago, my scouts detected them at the edge of the Sargasso Nebula. Ships that eat stars, entities that consume civilizations and leave nothing but sterile worlds. They are coming, Commander, not in years. In weeks, the thread she'd been weaving suddenly lashed out, wrapping around Jake's wrists, his neck, his heart. He felt them burrow beneath the armor, felt them connect to something deep in Lyra's core. The sensation was intimate and violating and absolutely terrifying. Then the memories hit, not his, hers. He saw Valorian cities burning, billions screaming as black shapes descended from orbital platforms that blotted out the sun. He felt Lyra's rage as she killed her own father, the Emperor, because the old fool wanted to negotiate with things that didn't understand mercy. He experienced her loneliness as she took command of a broken empire and turned it into a war machine designed for one purpose: survival. Earth thinks we're conquerors, Lyra whispered. They should be grateful we're only demanding cooperation. Jake gasped as the connection stabilized, his heartbeat synchronized with hers. Faster, stronger, be wrong. The Devourers don't care about your politics or your pride, she continued. They will strip this galaxy clean unless we stop them. And we cannot stop them divided, so you blackmail Earth into an alliance. Jake's voice came out steadier than he felt. Threaten our cities. Force a marriage. Real noble. Lyra's expression didn't change, but through the bond, Jake felt something unexpected. Shame. I have already lost 2 worlds, she said quietly. 17 billion souls. I will not lose Earth, because your leaders are too stubborn to see the threat. If making myself your enemy saves your species, I will wear that hatred forever. The armor suddenly released. Jake stumbled, caught himself, and realized he could move again. He should run. Alert Earth Command. Expose this insanity. Instead, he asked, "What do you need from me?" Lyra tilted her head, studying him with those impossible eyes. Humanity has something Valorians lost millennia ago. You call it stubbornness, recklessness, the refusal to accept inevitable defeat. She extended one clawed hand. I need you to teach my soldiers how to fight like humans. Dirty, desperate, willing to die if it means the enemy dies first. Jake stared at her hand. Through the bond, he felt the weight of her exhaustion. The centuries she'd lived, the battles she'd fought, the species she'd saved, and the ones she'd failed. And if I say no, then I will honor our marriage contract, return you to Earth, and prepare my fleet to die protecting a species that despises me. Lyra's hand didn't waver. But the Devourers will come regardless, and without Valorian shields, Earth will burn in approximately 43 days. 43 days. The number sat in Jake's chest like a ticking bomb. He looked past Lyra at the impossible architecture of her throne room, at the stars visible through walls that shouldn't be transparent, at the future she'd shown him through their bond, where black ships descended and humanity's greatest cities became mass graves. He thought about General Vance, who'd sent him here to die diplomatically. He thought about the soldiers he'd served with, the ones who trusted him to make the hard calls. He took her hand. Where do we start? Lyra's smile was sharp enough to cut starlight. War Council. Now. Your species has 12 ships capable of faster-than-light travel. I have 6,000. We need to triple that number before the Devourers reach the outer colonies. She pulled him toward a doorway that hadn't existed seconds ago. And, Commander, the part of the ceremony where we kiss, that seals the genetic bond permanently. After that, if I die, you die. If you die, you die, Jake finished. Mutual destruction. How romantic. Romance, Lyra said, dragging him into a corridor that twisted through dimensions his brain refused to process, is a luxury for species that aren't facing extinction. The War Council chamber materialized around them, and Jake saw exactly what she meant. The War Council was already screaming when they arrived, not metaphorically. A Valorian general with crystalline spines growing from his shoulders was literally shrieking at a holographic display. While two others tried to restrain him, the display showed a colony world, showed past tense, because even as Jake watched, it collapsed into a singularity that swallowed 14 million lives in under 6 seconds. Tracking lost contact with Helios Prime 4 minutes ago. A Valorian officer with bioluminescent markings across her face didn't look up from her console. That's the third outer colony this week. The Devourers are accelerating. Lyra's grip on Jake's hand tightened. Through the bond, he felt her calculate losses like a mathematician solving equations. No grief, no rage, just cold assessment of resources spent. Show him, she commanded. The hologram shifted. Jake's stomach lurched as the perspective zoomed out, revealing not one Devourer ship, but hundreds, thousands. They moved through space like a plague, organic vessels that pulsed with sickly light. Where they passed, stars dimmed, planets cracked, space itself seemed to rot. They don't have faster-than-light travel, the officer explained. They have something worse. They fold reality, create corridors through dimensions we can't access. Our weapons pass through them. Our shields barely slow them down, but they can die. Lyra released Jake's hand and strode to the display. She manipulated the hologram with all 4 arms, pulling up data streams that hurt to look at. Observe, Battle of Kresh. We lost 90 ships, but 3 Devourer vessels were destroyed. The footage played. Jake watched Valorian warships kamikaze into the organic nightmares, detonating their cores at point-blank range. The Devourers died screaming, their hulls rupturing in sprays of something that looked like infected blood. Suicide runs, Jake said flatly. You're throwing ships away. I am buying time. Lyra's voice carried no apology. Each Devourer destroyed is one less consuming our worlds. The math is simple. The math is genocide. Jake stepped forward, ignoring the hostile stares from Valorian officers who clearly didn't appreciate a human challenging their princess. You said you need me to teach your people to fight like humans. Fine. First lesson. Suicide tactics are what you do when you've already lost. We need to make them bleed without bleeding out ourselves. The crystalline general stopped shrieking. The human speaks of strategy he cannot comprehend. Our simulations are wrong. Jake pulled up his own interface on the hologram, accessing files he'd memorized during the trip to the flagship. Earth's complete military database handed over as part of the marriage agreement. You are fighting them like they're ships. They're not. They're biological entities, parasites. And parasites have weaknesses. He highlighted a section of Devourer anatomy, the pulsing core visible through semi-transparent flesh. Here, this structure appears in every scan. You've been targeting their hulls, their propulsion, their weapon systems. But this core, it regulates everything. You don't need to destroy the entire organism. You need to poison it. Lyra leaned closer, her silver eyes narrowing. Poison. Explain? Earth fought a war against bioweapons in 2043. Engineered viruses designed to target specific genetic markers. We lost Shanghai, but we learned how to counter adaptive biology. Jake's fingers flew across the interface, pulling up classified research that should have gotten him court-martialed for accessing. You have genetic samples from destroyed devourers. We have scientists who specialize in weaponized evolution. Combine them. The room went silent. The bioluminescent officer spoke first. A biological weapon against the devourers. It would take months to develop. We have weeks. Then we buy weeks. Jake turned to Lyra. You said humanity is reckless. Prove you meant it. Give me one ship, one crew. I'll take volunteers from both our species and hit the devourers where they're not expecting resistance. A raid, the crystalline general scoffed. Pointless, a distraction, Jake corrected. You pull forces from the core worlds. Focus everything on developing the weapon. My team keeps the devourers occupied on the frontier. We hit fast, hit hard, and make them chase us away from populated space. Lyra's expression remained unreadable, but through the bond, Jake felt her mind racing, calculating, weighing his life against strategic advantage. You would die, she said simply. Probably. Jake met her eyes. But I'd die buying Earth and Valoria the time to actually win this war. That's a better deal than whatever General Vance thought he was trading me for. For 3 heartbeats, nobody moved. Then Lyra smiled, and it was the most terrifying thing Jake had ever seen. You have your ship, Commander, the Valkyrie, our fastest strike vessel. You have authorization to recruit anyone foolish enough to follow you. She stepped so close he could feel the heat radiating from her armor skin. But understand this. The bond we share means I will feel every moment of your death if you fail. I will experience your pain, your fear, your final thoughts, and I will carry that with me for the rest of my extremely long life. Then I won't fail. Jake's voice didn't shake. Through the bond, he felt Lyra's surprise at his certainty. Arrogant human, but there was something else in her tone now, something almost like respect. She turned to the assembled officers. Prepare the Valkyrie, divert resources to the biological weapons research, and send a priority transmission to Earth Command. Tell them Commander Harrison is no longer their sacrifice. He is mine, and I am sending him to hunt gods. The council erupted into motion, officers scrambling to execute orders that would either save 2 species or doom them faster. Lyra caught Jake's arm as he turned to leave. The kiss, she said quietly. The ceremony's final binding. We can delay it until you return. Jake thought about 43 days. Thought about the devourers consuming worlds while politicians argued. Thought about the bond already connecting him to this alien princess who'd lost 17 billion souls and refused to lose more. Or we seal it now, he said, and you spend every second I'm gone feeling exactly how determined I am to come back. Lyra's laugh was sharp and sudden and genuinely surprised. You are either the bravest human I have ever met, Commander Harrison, or the most suicidal. Why not both? She pulled him close with 2 hands, while the other 2 began tracing patterns in the air, the final binding ritual that would make their connection permanent and absolute. Why not both indeed? Lyra whispered. Then she kissed him, and Jake felt his DNA rewrite itself one final time. The Valkyrie launched with a crew of 23 and a death wish. 12 Valorians, 11 humans, all volunteers, all fully aware they were being sent to provoke an enemy that ate stars for breakfast. Jake stood on the bridge watching his new crew settle into stations designed for physiologies that didn't match. The humans moved too slowly. The Valorians compensated with reflexes that made human reaction times look glacial. It should have been chaos. Instead, it worked. "Jump coordinates locked," announced Lieutenant Sophie Grant, his human navigator. She'd been a transport pilot before this. Now she was calculating routes through hostile space with the same calm she'd used delivering supplies to Mars colonies. "We'll hit the Devourer's advance fleet in 6 hours. Weapon systems synchronized," added Krell, a Valorian weapons officer whose scales shifted colors based on stress levels. Currently, orange, moderately terrified. "The plasma lances are adapted for human targeting protocols. This is either brilliant or insane." "Definitely insane," Jake muttered. Through the bond, he felt Lyra's presence like a distant heartbeat. She was in another strategy session, coordinating the biological weapon research while simultaneously managing the defense of 17 colony worlds. Her exhaustion bled through their connection, but she'd locked down everything else, keeping secrets even from him. Smart, a Valorian engineer approached, her forearms carrying data tablets that streamed incomprehensible symbols. "The graviton shielding you requested. We installed it, but I need to be clear about the limitations. It will destabilize local spacetime when activated. Anything within 2 kilometers will experience severe temporal distortion." "How severe?" "Minutes become hours. Hours become days. Your perception of time inside the field will be dramatically accelerated." She hesitated. "It has never been tested in combat. The prototype killed 17 volunteers during development." Jake felt every human crew member's attention lock onto him. "So we flip it on, experience weeks of subjective time while seconds pass outside, and either train ourselves into an elite unit or go insane from temporal psychosis." He grinned. "I've had worse mission briefs." Nobody laughed. "Activate it the moment we clear the jump," Jake ordered. "We have 6 hours of real-time travel. Let's turn that into 6 months of preparation." The engineer's scales went crimson. Absolute terror. "Sir, the psychological damage is a problem for after we survive." Jake turned to address the entire bridge. "Listen up. We are outmatched, outgunned, out of our minds for thinking this will work. But we have one advantage the Devourers don't expect. We're too stupid to know when we're beaten." Sophie snorted. Several Valorians made sounds that might have been laughter or choking. "6 months in a bottle," Jake continued. "We drill, we train, we learn to fight as one crew instead of 2 species pretending to cooperate. And when we drop out of that temporal field, we hit the Devourers so hard they forget which direction they were traveling."
"And the biological weapon?"
Krell asked. "The timeline is out of our hands." Jake felt Lyra's approval pulse through the bond. She was listening somehow, even across the distance. "Our job is simple. Make noise. Draw attention. Keep the Devourers focused on us instead of the core worlds. Everything else is someone else's problem." The ship shuddered as the jump drive engaged. Reality twisted. Space became a kaleidoscope of colors that shouldn't exist. Jake's stomach tried to relocate to his throat, while his inner ear insisted gravity was a polite suggestion rather than a law. The Valorians handled it better. Their biology adapted for dimensional travel that would liquefy human organs. Then they were through, and the graviton field activated. Time broke. Jake experienced the next 6 subjective months in fragments. Training drills that lasted days. Combat simulations where Valorian reflexes merged with human tactical thinking. Mistakes that cost imaginary lives. Adjustments. Improvements. The crew stopped being 2 species and became something else entirely. Sophie learned to predict Valorian attack patterns. Krell mastered human improvisation. The barriers dissolved not through speeches or forced camaraderie, but through shared exhaustion and the simple fact that survival required trust. Jake felt himself changing. The bond with Lyra deepened, fed by months of isolation where she was his only connection to anything outside the Valkyrie. He felt her fight battles he couldn't see, felt her grieve losses she wouldn't name, felt her hope that his insane plan might actually work. And he felt something else. The Devourers weren't mindless. They were aware, intelligent in ways that made human consciousness look primitive. Through Lyra's memories, through fragments she couldn't fully hide, Jake understood what they were really fighting. The Devourers were evolution's answer to stagnation. They consumed civilizations that had stopped growing, stopped changing, stopped pushing boundaries. They were nature's reset button, and they'd decided humanity and Valoria had both peaked. The realization hit Jake during a combat drill 3 months into their accelerated timeline. He froze mid-simulation, causing a cascade failure that killed everyone in the virtual scenario. "Commander?" Sophie's concern was immediate. "They think we're done," Jake whispered. "The Devourers, they consume species that have reached their evolutionary ceiling. They're not evil, they're gardeners." Krell's scales flashed violet. Confusion. Then why fight them? Because they're wrong. Jake's voice gained strength. Humanity and Valoria haven't peaked. We're just getting started. This alliance, this crew, this whole desperate mess proves we're still evolving, still adapting, and we're going to shove that fact down their throats until they choke on it. The months compressed. 6 became, 5 became, 3 became, 1. The graviton field collapsed. They'd been gone 6 hours and 14 minutes. The crew had aged half a year. "Devourer fleet detected," Sophie announced, her voice steady despite the temporal hangover that made everyone's hands shake. 47 vessels, 300,000 kilometers in closing. Jake settled into the command chair. Through the bond, he felt Lyra's sudden, sharp attention. She was watching through his eyes now, experiencing every moment. All hands battle stations. His crew moved with precision that shouldn't exist after 6 hours of travel. Weapons hot, shields maximum, and somebody play music, something loud, something human. Ancient rock thundered through the speakers, a song about thunder and lightning that Earth had nearly forgotten. The Devourers emerged from folded space like tumors in reality, and the Valkyrie dove straight into their formation, screaming defiance in 2 languages while plasma lances carved burning paths through flesh that had consumed galaxies. The hunt had begun. The first Devourer died confused. Its organic hull, designed to absorb energy weapons and shrug off kinetic impacts, had no defense against coordinated strikes that targeted structural weak points with surgical precision. The Valkyrie's plasma lances punched through the creature's semi-permeable membrane exactly where Jake's crew had spent months learning to aim. The core ruptured, bioluminescent fluid sprayed into vacuum. The Devourer convulsed once and went still. 46 vessels remained, they noticed. "Evasive pattern Delta 7, Jake commanded as reality bent around them. The Devourers didn't fire weapons. They simply existed in multiple locations simultaneously, their dimensional folding creating zones of impossible geometry that shredded anything caught inside. Sophie twisted the Valkyrie through gaps that shouldn't exist, her hands moving faster than thought. Beside her, a Valorian co-pilot named Thresh called out spatial anomalies half a second before they formed. Human intuition merged with Valorian predictive algorithms. They didn't just survive, they danced. Target the cluster at bearing 270, Krell announced. His targeting solution appeared on every screen simultaneously, a complex firing pattern that required split-second timing from 8 different weapon stations. Execute, Jake said. The Valkyrie became a constellation of destruction. Plasma lances fired in sequence, each shot calculated to drive the Devourers toward a specific point in space. When the final creature arrived exactly where predicted, the ship's main cannon fired a graviton spike that collapsed local spacetime into a temporary black hole. 4 Devourers vanished into the singularity before it evaporated. 42 remaining. Through the bond, Jake felt Lyra's astonishment. Her fleets had been fighting the Devourers for months with minimal success. The Valkyrie had just killed 5 in under 3 minutes. They're adapting, Sophie warned. The Devourer formation shifted, spreading out to prevent cluster targeting. Their folding patterns became erratic, unpredictable. Whatever advantage we had, it's shrinking fast. Then we changed tactics. Jake pulled up the biological weapon data Lyra had secretly transmitted during the battle. The research was progressing faster than expected, but they still needed 2 weeks minimum. Krell loathed the experimental payloads, the ones labeled catastrophically unstable. The Valorian's scales went white. Pure horror. Sir, those are prototype genetic disruptors. They haven't been tested. They might dissolve our own hull. They might create a chain reaction that ignites the local star. They might do absolutely nothing. Perfect. Jake grinned. Fire 3 at random targets. Let's see what happens. The payloads launched. Missiles that wobbled through space like drunken meteors, their casings already breaking down from the volatile compounds inside. 2 missed completely, detonating harmlessly in empty space. The 3rd hit a Devourer mid-fold. What happened next violated 6 laws of physics and created 2 new ones. The creature's organic matter began replicating uncontrollably, cancerous growths erupting across its hull. But the growth wasn't random. It was structured, crystalline. The Devourer started transforming into something that looked like a geometric nightmare, all angles and impossible dimensions. Then it exploded. The shockwave carried the genetic disruptor to 3 nearby Devourers. They began transforming too. Pull back, Jake ordered. Maximum burn. Get us clear before The chain reaction cascaded. 7 Devourers detonated in sequence, their deaths triggering secondary explosions that ripped holes in dimensional fabric. Space itself screamed. When the fireworks cleared, 31 Devourers remained, and they were angry. Incoming fold signatures, Thresh shouted. They're not running, they're converging on our position. All of them, the remaining Devourers, abandoned their advance toward Valorian space. They turned as one organism, focused entirely on the tiny ship that had just killed 16 of their kind. Message incoming from Princess Lyra, the communications officer announced. She says, and I quote, "You magnificent idiot, run." Jake felt Lyra's genuine fear through the bond. Not for herself, for him. The realization was oddly touching. Nav, plot a jump course toward the Kronos Nebula, he ordered. Engineering, I need every drop of power diverted to engines and shields. Weapons, keep firing, but don't expect to kill anything. We're not fighting anymore. We're leading them on a chase. The Kronos Nebula is a graveyard, Sophie protested. Failed stars, spatial anomalies, radiation that will cook us in our suits. There's a reason nobody goes there. Exactly. Jake watched the Devourers close the distance, their organic hulls pulsing with bioluminescent fury. They want us dead. We're going to make them work for it. Every hour we keep them chasing us is another hour Lyra's scientists have to finish the real weapon. The Valkyrie jumped. 31 devourers followed. The chase lasted 9 days. 9 days of running through spatial nightmares, of dodging collapsed stars and navigating radiation storms that should have sterilized the ship, of sleeping in 2-hour shifts, while the devourers pursued with mechanical patience. The crew held together through shared desperation. Humans and Valorians stopped seeing species and started seeing only crew. Sophie and Thresh developed a rapport that transcended language. Krell taught human gunners Valorian meditation techniques to steady their aim during high-stress targeting, and Jake felt Lyra every moment. Her presence in his mind became a lifeline during the worst hours. When exhaustion threatened to break him, her strength bled through the bond. When doubt crept in, her absolute certainty that he would succeed pushed it back. On the 9th day, deep in the Kronos Nebula's most hostile region, the Devourers finally cornered them. 31 vessels emerged from folded space in a perfect sphere, trapping the Valkyrie with nowhere to run. Shields at 17%. Engineering reported. Weapons depleted. Life support critical. "We're done, sir." Jake looked at his crew, at the humans who'd followed him into hell, at the Valorians who'd trusted a species they'd threatened with extinction weeks ago, at Sophie, who managed a tired smile despite knowing they were about to die. Through the bond, he felt Lyra screaming, felt her desperately trying to send reinforcements that couldn't possibly arrive in time. "Attention, Devourer Fleet," Jake announced over open channels. "I'm Commander Jake Harrison of Earth, and I have a message from every species you've ever underestimated." He triggered the Valkyrie's self-destruct, not the standard version, the modified one his engineer had built during their 6 months of accelerated time, the one that would turn their ship into a delivery system for every remaining genetic disruptor payload, the one that would paint 31 Devourers with the most virulent biological weapon ever created. "The message is this," Jake continued as the countdown hit 10 seconds. "We don't surrender, we don't submit, and we definitely don't go quietly." Through the bond, he felt Lyra's horror give way to understanding, then pride, then something that might have been love. 5 seconds. "Tell Earth I got a better deal than Vance thought," Jake whispered. 3 seconds. The Devourers began folding space to escape. Too slow. The Valkyrie detonated, and its payload spread through the dimensional rifts like poison in veins, infecting every Devourer simultaneously. Jake felt his connection to Lyra surge one final time. Then darkness. Jake woke to pain. Not the gentle kind, the type that informed him every cell in his body had been destroyed and rebuilt at least twice. His eyes opened to a medical bay ceiling that curved in ways architecture shouldn't. Valorian design. He was alive. That seems statistically improbable. "You are the single most infuriating human ever born." Lyra's voice came from his left. She sat beside his bed, all 4 hands clenched into fists. Her silver eyes were brighter than usual. Angry or relieved, Jake couldn't tell through the bond, because the bond felt different now. Stronger, deeper. The Devourers? His throat felt like he'd swallowed broken glass. "Dead, all 31 vessels. Your payload worked better than projected. The genetic disruptor spread through their entire advanced fleet before we could even study it properly." Lyra's voice carried grudging admiration. "You also destroyed a 2 billion credit warship, violated 16 safety protocols, and technically died for 47 seconds before Valorian medical technology dragged you back. Technically doesn't count." Jake tried to sit up, failed spectacularly. "The crew? 21 survivors? Sophie Grant is currently teaching our pilots human swear words. Chell received a commendation and 3 marriage proposals. Your species and mine are apparently competing to see who can claim your people as heroes first. Lyra finally unclenched one hand and placed it over his. You bought us the time we needed. The biological weapon is complete. We deployed it 3 days ago. The Devourer main fleet is in full retreat. Jake processed that. Processed the fact that they'd actually won. That his suicide run had worked. So, Earth is safe. Veloria is safe. The galaxy gets to keep existing. He studied Lyra's face. Why do you look like someone just died? Because you did. Her voice cracked. I felt it, Jake. Through the bond, I experienced every second of your death. Felt your consciousness fragment. Felt you choose annihilation over surrender. She leaned closer, and I felt something else. In that final moment, you weren't thinking about Earth or duty or glory. You were thinking about me. Jake had no defense against that. It was true. The bond works both ways, he said quietly. I felt you too. Felt you ready to abandon the core worlds if it meant sending ships to save me. You would have sacrificed billions for one human you barely know. Lyra's laugh was bitter. I am a terrible ruler. You're a person who cares? That's not terrible. That's just complicated. Jake managed to sit up this time, ignoring his body's protest. What happens now? War's over. The marriage was political theater. Earth and Veloria are allies. You don't need me anymore. Don't need you. Lyra repeated the words like they were foreign. The bond we share is permanent, Jake Harrison. If you die, I die. If I die, you die. Our genetic codes are intertwined at levels that make separation impossible. Need is irrelevant. We are literally stuck with each other. That's not what I'm asking. Lyra went silent. Through the bond, Jake felt her wrestling with something. Fear, hope, emotions she'd suppressed for centuries while playing the role of untouchable princess. I have ruled Veloria for 400 years, she said finally. I have led fleets, conquered systems, made decisions that ended trillions of lives. I am very good at being a weapon. She met his eyes. I am terrible at being a wife. Good thing I'm terrible at being a husband. Jake took her hand with both of his. How about we figure it out together? No politics, no strategy. Just 2 people who accidentally saved the galaxy and now have to deal with the consequences. The consequences include Earth demanding you return as a hero, Veloria expecting me to maintain diplomatic distance, both our peoples watching every interaction to ensure neither species gains advantage over the other. Lyra's grip tightened. It will be impossibly complicated. I did just spend 6 months in a temporal bottle and 9 days being chased by extinction-level threats. Complicated sounds relaxing. Lyra actually smiled. Real, unguarded. You are aware that Valorian marriage customs include ritual combat, genetic compatibility tests, and a ceremony that lasts 17 days? You're aware that human marriage customs include arguing about whose family to visit for holidays and passive-aggressive debates about furniture placement? That sounds horrifying. Wait until you meet my mother. Lyra laughed, and the sound filled the medical bay with something that felt dangerously close to joy. The door opened. Sophie entered, followed by half the Valkyrie's crew. Humans and Valorians mixed together, no longer separated by species, but united by shared trauma and victory. Commander, Sophie announced, Earth and Veloria are holding a joint ceremony. They want to honor the Valkyrie crew. Speeches, medals, the full political circus. She grinned. They're also apparently debating whether you and Princess Lyra need a second wedding for Earth customs or if the Valorian bonding counts legally. Tell them we'll attend their ceremony, Lyra said, standing with regal composure that lasted exactly until she looked at Jake and her expression softened. But the wedding is our business. They can have their alliance. We keep our marriage. Possessive, Jake observed. You literally rewrote your DNA to be mine. I am simply acknowledging facts. The crew laughed. Human and Valorian voices blending together, the sound of a future that shouldn't exist but did anyway because a few people had been too stubborn to accept defeat. Jake stood, ignoring the medical equipment's protests. Through the bond, he felt Lyra's concern and amusement in equal measure. One question, he said to the room. The Devourers are retreating. Do we let them go, or do we chase them down and make sure they understand humanity and Valoria are officially off the menu? The crew's response was immediate and unanimous.
We hunt them,
Sophie said.
We end this, Krell added.
We show the galaxy what happens when you underestimate evolution, a Valorian engineer announced. Lyra's smile was sharp enough to cut stars. My husband speaks wisdom. Rally the fleet. Earth and Valoria move as one. The Devourers wanted to prune civilizations that stopped growing. She looked at Jake. Let us demonstrate exactly how much growing we have left to do. Jake took her hand, feeling the bond pulse with shared purpose. For the record, he said, when Vance ordered me to marry you, I thought it was a death sentence.
It was, Lyra agreed. You died and came back.
Very dramatic.
I'm saying it was the best order I ever followed.
Lyra pulled him close, her forearms wrapping around him in a way that should have felt alien, but instead felt like home. The galaxy will be very confused by us, she whispered. Good. Let them be confused. We'll be busy being brilliant. Outside the medical bay, two species prepared for a future built on impossible alliances and reckless hope. The Devourers would learn what humanity had always known and what Valoria had forgotten. Evolution never stops. It just finds new ways to survive. And sometimes it starts with a forced marriage and ends with the universe learning to be afraid of what love can build.